For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Alchemy of Pain podcast. I have the privilege of interviewing people who have been through some really challenging events in their life and how they made it through, what they learned, who they became. These are the stories we tell. Why? To help you keep going and to be encouraged. I had so much fun talking to my guest today. Before we started recording, it was almost hard to hit the record button. Michelle Kuei is an inspiration, and currently she serves in a variety of capacities. Why don't I let you, Michelle, tell our audience what you do today?
I am a motivational speaker. I am a marketing coach. I am everybody's bestie. And I am the one who do a lot of Christmas countdown on Facebook. So if you follow me on Facebook, be aware that I do Christmas countdown all the time. Because I really think that it's important for us to come together. And Christmas just remind me of that togetherness. Being together, sitting by the fireside, we light up the fire, we share our story, we share our struggles, we share our moment of victory, that small win in our life that just light up someone's life, and you can see the sparkles and joys. And I think that is very contagious, that is very infectious, that is something that we want to spread in this world. And so I consider myself as someone's bestie because, we all have those moments where we don't feel comfortable in sharing those stories with our family member because they may not understand what we're going through, and people might judge. So I like to think of myself as your BFF, and anything that you share with me, it's safe with me, and we can do a lot more powerful things together.
Well, I heard about your backstory, which we're going to get to, but then I went to your website, which is elevatelifecoaching.org, and I started reading what you offer businesses. And I'm like, I need to hire her. So we're going to have that conversation after we do this interview. But you believe in connecting the dots for people. It can be overwhelming, especially in business, when seems like there's always another app to apply or technology to learn, and you have a great message, but your marketing doesn't hit. And I love your approach, which is we can all lift each other up and support each other. It's not a competition.
Yeah. Life is simple. We as general, we make it very complicated. And a lot of time it's because our own thoughts, right? We make it seem so complicated. We tend to overanalyze how our days go. And sometimes you have one of those days, it's just another day, but we make it into a worst situation ever. So I think it's really important for us to inspire each other so that we don't have to have a lot of those worst days. We can actually have more of the better days than ever if we can only create that shift in ourselves and for others. So if there's one thing that I can do for you today that would change your mind and feeling better, or just make you smile when you see me smile, my mission is accomplished. And it doesn't take a whole lot to do that.
So, for all of those of you in the audience that are side eyeing this and saying, yeah, 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 I mean, Pollyanna, sunshine, rainbows, roses, and all that, you need to lean in right now while Michelle tells you her origin story, the painful event that changed her life forever.
Yeah. My story began when I was 11 years old. I was crossing the street one day after school, and my mom was picking me up. I can see her motorbike. Back then, I was still in Taiwan. So I was born in Taiwan. I'm an immigrant to America, And back in Taiwan, we had a lot of those motorbike. So she was coming to pick me up from school on a motorbike, and I saw her coming. So I was really excited, time to go home. And I waved goodbye to my friends, and I was crossing the street. And in the middle of the street, I heard all these noise that was going around, and I saw and felt the camaraderie of all the people trying to shout, but I couldn't comprehend because I was crossing the street. So by the time I realized that something had happened, I woke up, I was blacked out, woke up in a hospital bed, and a lot of the detail of what had happened was filled by the witness who was on the site. And so apparently, what had happened was as I was crossing in the middle of the street, there was a taxi that ran really fast, hit me, pushed me about 100 feet away, and it knocked me out. I had no idea and no clue of how I got to the hospital. I remember waking up in the hospital bed and I was just feeling this excruciating pain from my waist all the way to my ankle. And when I woke up, I saw myself, I was wrapped in these plaster. I couldn't move. And it was just very painful. And I saw the doctor talking to my parents. They were on the side. My mom was crying. And I was panicking. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew I was in pain. And the car
So,
accident basically changed everything for me.
of course, of course. Well, first of all, how grateful. It's so interesting because when people hear stories, they immediately relate to something else. And I remember when I was 11, a little girl in my grade school, Lisa Still, was getting off of the school bus and she was hit by a vehicle and she died. And I remember our whole class went to her funeral, and it is a memory that is in my heart to this day. And I am 61. I'm so grateful that you survived. But then from that point on, as a little girl, you had to learn how to live a completely different life. I'm sure the rehab itself physically was so extensive.
I basically spent the following 4 years going back and forth in the hospital, in the surgery room to repair, to put the pin in, pull them out. And my bone wasn't healing. So the doctor kept going in back in there to stabilize it. And at 11, I was moving around so much that I could not stay still. And I am not the kind of person who stays still. I like to be moving around. And so that created a lot of going back and forth, and doctor were frustrated with me, and my physical therapist, they were having a hard time getting me to do the physical movement to rehab. And so that 4 years was not easy in terms of there's a lot of things that used to be able to do I couldn't do anymore. So I used to be able to run, I no longer run. I used to be able to walk normally, I no longer walk normally. I had to use wheelchair. But given the fact that I was very active, and you can probably tell the personality that I am now, I learned how to navigate and play with the wheelchair. I was doing a lot of like tricks with fun tricks with wheelchair. And I even raised my hospital mate down the street because it's something fun, because there's nothing else for me to do. Didn't have to go to school anymore. Perfect. But then that was the fun part. But then it finally hit me because there's a lot of peer judgment that start to surface. Like people are looking at me that I walk with crutches, I look short, I walk funny, I walk like a wobbly penguin. And I didn't die from the accident, but I wasn't paralyzed. So for heaven's sake, right? I wasn't paralyzed, but still I didn't look normal. Normal was something that's out of the window for me.
And here you are in your preteen, early teen years when fitting in is so important, or to most of us, it
Yeah.
was. So,
Yeah.
how did you navigate as a very young woman? How did you navigate that pain?
I never, I wanting to fit in so bad that I was so ashamed of all the scars that I had on my leg. So in the hot summer day, it could be triple digit outside. I would wear these pantyhose to cover me up. so that my scar would be hidden from everybody else. I wore pants so people don't see the fact that my leg look crooked. It looks funny. And I have pair of shoes that are has indent, like elevated. And so when I walk, I don't look like a penguin at all. But to me, it was a sign of a shame, being a sign of not good enough, a sign of not normal, a sign of you don't belong here. And I remember one day I was coming out from school and the school bus was packed. Walk onto the school bus, there was a girl who's sitting in the chair and it was so packed that there was nowhere for me to sit down. So I was holding on to the side of the chair and she pushed my hand away and she gave me this look I would remember up until this day because that was the look that went deep into my heart. It was a look that you don't belong here and I don't want you to be near me. And so it almost feels like she doesn't want me to be close because she doesn't want whatever I have to be to be spreading to her. And that to me is something that I will live for my whole entire teenage life, for my up until I think it was to college, that I finally realized that, you know, I can't be everybody's cup of tea. So since I am different, I'm just gonna be a weirdo and I'm going to be like dressing up in these baggy jeans and baggy t-shirts. Let me just be different. I'm just gonna be different. So I think there was a rebellion year from college all the way to graduate school. I was just trying to be different. Since I can't fit in, I might as well just be different. So I struggle with that, being fitting versus being different.
There is this dance between rejection and rebellion that I went through myself. I was bullied mercilessly in high school. And at first, I retreated and just became very inward. But then when I went to college, I reinvented myself and I had purple spiky hair. And I was like, hit me with your best shot and don't tread on me. Equally a false persona created to survive.
Mhm.
So at some point, the false personas were deconstructed and the real Michelle emerged. How did you get to that point?
It was not until when I was in my 40s, I basically went through a lot of failing relationship. And it's funny how our relationship either elevate us or it actually sink us. And so a lot of my relationship had in the past almost fail to the point where it sunk me. Right. So I felt not good enough. I felt small. I felt that I wasn't worthy of anybody's love. But at the same time, on the opposite of that is that it helped me to see that you know what, maybe this is not for me. Maybe relationship is not for me. Then what do I have? And it prompted me to have a lot of awareness of going into knowing who I am. So in my 40s, I realized, okay, so I am not everybody's cup of tea, and maybe relationship is not going to be for me. How do I want to show up for myself? And at that point, I was gaining weight. I was to the point where a lot of my jeans won't fit anymore. So I remember driving to Walmart one day, and I was sitting in the car. I got out of the car. I looked down. There was a stain on my t-shirt, and it was a white t-shirt. I couldn't figure out like how did I get that stain over there. So I sat back into my car, looked down, and of course I gained so much weight, my steering wheel was bumping against my t-shirt, so it left a mark on my t-shirt. And it was a sign of, okay, I got to do something about this, about my body, right? Because if I don't treasure myself, nobody will. I don't have the kind of relationship where people love me for who I am. So if I don't love myself, then no one will. And it was my aha moment that prompted me to do something about it. It was my wake up call and say, this is gonna whatever that I do, it's gonna be for me.
I realized that the accident was a pivotal moment, but it seems to me that this moment where you finally decided I need to treasure myself, set you off on the trajectory of the woman you are today. And what a wonderful thing for our audience to hear, too, because we've all heard those voices, whether it's externally from bullies or the internal critic that says, you just don't belong here. You might as well give up. I have heard those voices myself, and it's so painful. But then when you finally rise up and say, I will not turn my back on myself again,
Yeah.
because I am the one person guaranteed I will spend the rest of my life with me. I want to say too, this realization, this aha moment came in your 40s. Do you think that you could have had a conversation with 20-year-old Michelle that would have gotten her there sooner? Or do you think all of this life that happened up until then was necessary for you to have your aha moment?
I think the journey of how fast we travel and at what point you're going to have that aha moment, it's already pre-designed by the grand scheme of the divine, right? But had I wished that I had this realization a little earlier, absolutely. And a lot of us are sitting in that space of, I'm just going through the motion of life, and this is who I believe I am. And so I'm looking for a lot of outside validation. I'm looking for a lot of outside approval because people said this is who I am, right? But we are not realizing that that's not who you are. Who you are has more deeper meaning to that. So if someone had walked up to me and said, Michelle, have you thought about this in my 20s? I would have saved myself another 20 years of all that painful journey. But I didn't have that someone. And this is why your work and mine are so valuable to those who need to hear, because we didn't have that someone at our age 20 to tell us, hey, have you thought about maybe you can look at it differently? I didn't have that someone.
And nor did I. I also think I thought I knew better, so I didn't have ears to hear, and life sort of had to kick me in the ass a few times until I realized, wait a minute, I'm living in a dream. It's actually more like a nightmare.
Mhm.
I also have come to, and I know you have, value the stories. Like, I would have never chosen to go through any of them, but man, they make a compelling case when I'm on a stage or trying to give a speech or doing a workshop. It's sort of like, hey, I didn't come from an ivory tower, let me tell you.
Right.
And all of a sudden, people have ears to hear because through your pain, they can open their own hearts. And so you had your aha moment. It's time to treasure me. How did that play out in real life? What did you do next?
I went and bought a Pilates ball as my next step. Went and bought a Pilates ball as my next step because everything starts small. We don't have big dreams and goals yet. We start with just that idea of I want to be different. I want to change. And so for me, that whole step of involving change is okay. So if I can run, never been into the gym before, the very least I could do is maybe try a Pilates ball. And back then, Pilates ball, like 10 years ago, Pilates ball was like really hot and that was trendy. So I bought a Pilates ball, brought it home, didn't know how to use it. I had to Google YouTube, a lot of YouTube tutorial to learn how to use a Pilates ball for people with disability, people with limited mobility. And so that was my starting point. And so I did that for a week, cleaned up my diet, start tracking my macro like everybody else in the world, right? Tracking the micro. And it got me feeling motivated. And if I can do one small thing today, then I can do one small thing tomorrow. And with consistency, you see results. And so I was able to create that consistency for a week, 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I got more ambitious. Okay, what can I do more as my next step? I started to look into having a gym, like maybe a gym membership. I didn't like the idea of going to a big membership area and where people can turn and look at me and judge me. So I chose one of the private, smaller gym call up the owner. I say, hey, I'm really looking to like work on myself. Can I come in? Can you give me a tool? So he walked me through the gym, and he offered his service. He said, I can train you because in the gym, there's no one who looks like me or who have worked with a person with disability. So he offered his service. So I started training with a personal trainer. I got really fit for that first year. And during that time, my friends started to talk about this amazing trip that they were all on and that I wanted to be part of. And going back to that, I didn't feel like I was fitting in, right? So even as an adult, I still didn't feel that I was fitting in because the conversation that my colleagues have are about going to the gym, going to hike, or going to doing exercise, and I could never be part of that conversation. And there's part of me always wanting to be that. So going to the gym was part of that conversation. I started to fit in. Okay, I can talk about how much do you bench? How much do you weigh? How much protein are you taking? I started to become part of it. So the next step was I wanted to be on this trip that they're talking about.
Now,
And
this is not, we're not talking about spring break in Cancun.
no, we're talking about 26 miles of Inca Trail to hike up to Machu Picchu.
I mean, someone should make a documentary about this.
I
All
would
right,
hope.
documentary script writers, please, this is a story. So your training had to talk about elevate. What did it look like?
It looks like going to the gym every single day, training for 2 hours. I was really on top of all my diet. I was training on a lot of upper body strength. I was training my legs. I was training my whole entire body for consistently for a year before I actually prepare myself to book that flight to Cusco, to Machu Picchu. And even when I got there, I still struggled with the high altitude syndrome because it's at a high altitude area where you do starting to experience this respiratory distress. So you feel more tired and you feel more, your breathing start to labor, and there's a lot of other side effects to it. So I went to Cusco by myself with a little luggage with my two crutches, and I said the pink crutches because I was so into hot pink. Back then, I had two pink crutches with me, and I was on it. I wanted
Wait,
to be
wait,
there
wait. How do you climb Machu Picchu with crutches?
with two crutches. You walk. So my two crutches, they're hand crutches that I use, and they almost look like a hiking pole. Like those who hike, you might want to consider just like hiking pole, right?
Okay,
So instead
okay.
of holding it vertically, mine is more like a pushing down. So pushing down, and each step I climb, it's a push up. So I had to use a lot of upper body strength. And if I were to go back, so after COVID, it changes everything. Before COVID, I had six pack, and I kid you not, I had six packs because that was to the extent of how much I had trained.
You had to feel really good about yourself.
Not only did I felt good, I felt there was a possibility. I felt there was hope for me. It's like someone opened the door to opportunity, to the positivity, to a life that I had never experienced in the past. I felt more confident. I felt great. I felt I have everything under control, even when it's chaos.
You discovered your own strength.
Yes.
You discovered and revealed, it was revealed who you really are through all of this. I applaud, first of all, your, a lot of people get a thought, but they don't necessarily follow up. You took that thought, followed up baby step by baby step, and transformed your life. So you did Machu Picchu.
I did Machu Picchu. I hiked through Machu Picchu, and the last day, I remember standing in front of the last 50 steps onto Machu Picchu. And I was like, holy moly, how am I going to climb up the last 50 steps? Because it was at a 60, 70-degree angle. And I do have a film on YouTube that kind of documented it of how I climbed it. At that point, I basically look up, I'm like, holy cow, how am I going to climb up? The steps is very narrow. It can only fit about a foot. And so let alone landing on my two crutches, right? So at that point, I looked and took down my backpack and my crutches. I gave it to the tour guy who was standing next to me. I said, you go up there and meet me up there. At that point, I got down to my knees and hand and I crawled up each step, the last 50 steps, into Machu Picchu. And the tour guy actually had a video and he recorded it and he turned down. I didn't dare to look down because I know that if I were to look down, I would never be able to keep moving forward because that fear would comes and it would hit me like it paralyzes me. So the whole entire time I was just focusing, where do I land my next step so that I don't fall?
What a great analogy to life. Like, don't look down. Don't go where the fear is. Go where the love is. Go where the hope is. Keep moving, which is really the message of this podcast. All right. So I know after I've accomplished something amazing that I've been working for a long time, boom, it's done. And there's this little honeymoon period and then crash. Did you experience a crash?
So I did experience a crash, but that crash was very brief because at that point, I know that there is a possibility for me and that I was meant to do something even bigger. Machu Picchu was great. It was one moment of life where I had to meet myself for who I am, but I was meant for something bigger. And I knew at that point that with all the inspiration and all the people who's passing me by, I was an inspiration to them. That I life has a better and bigger design for me. And so I came home, I was feeling inspired. I felt that there has to be a deeper meaning and purpose of what I do and who I am. So I start on the journey of searching that. What is my big main purpose in this life? And what was I set out to do? And
The
so
eternal question, the existential question. So, there that involves usually a little bit of wrestling, a lot of talks with the divine. And how did you get to your purpose?
So my purpose is to be an inspiration for someone else. There's a couple of ways that we can do this, right? We can spread our message, we can talk about our story, and that was one of the things that I decided to do. Well, I don't have any big and followers or anything like that. What if I would just tell people about what I have done? And maybe that's going to inspire them to do something differently in their life that creates a change. I am the catalyst in their life. Great. So I started to share my message, share my story, and told them about how I was overcoming this little negative self talk and how I found myself. And maybe you can try that too if you're open to it, right? So that was my big aha moment where telling your stories and sharing your message can actually inspire a lot more people if you to keep it to yourself. And so I wanted to be a speaker. I turned and I went and I start learning how to speak, how to do professional speaking. And I also went on this coaching journey. I said, well, maybe there's something else I can do with the skills that I have. I'm a great listener. I listen to people. And maybe if I get myself certified learning how to be a coach, I could be a coach. So I went on to this coaching certification program, got myself certified. I want to do it right. I want to do it right for the people that I serve. So I got certified as a life coach, went on, started my business, and I was struggling with with how to get it going, how to get it started. And I learned all these marketing skills. And a couple of years ago, I pivoted, and now I'm working primarily with marketing.
Which led me to your website, today. And just to remind everybody, the website is, I mean, I've got so many notes here, elevatelifecoaching.org. I immediately was struck by the clarity and the brightness of your writing. You're really a writer at heart, aren't you?
I am. But no one knows that this is my second language. And it was a struggle for me. It's a lack of confidence and knowing that, oh, I can even write. But the thing about marketing is it's not your usual academic writing, right? Because marketing, you want people to resonate, you want your message to be heard by general public. So a lot of time in marketing, we don't want to write very professionally, academically, because those are the things that people don't connect. So if you and I are having a conversation, that is building relationship. And marketing to me, it's about relationship building. And I need to come across with you. So I don't want to write very fancy academically. I want to come to you like we're talking, best friend.
Conversationally
Yes.
and connecting the dots so that, you might have great stories and great content or great services, but so often we're just like throwing up stuff against the wall and hoping something sticks. Is that a common malady that you see?
That's a very common thing that a lot of people do in marketing. We'll just put it out into the world. Let's just see how it happens. Let's just see how it lands. And sometimes it doesn't. So we keep changing it, right? So one of the things that we need to be cautioned in especially in marketing is yes, you do want to test out things, but you also want to test out things that you know that it's going to work, right? So be patient. And a lot of what I'm talking about in marketing also apply to your life because you do want to test out things, try new things, be adventurous, but knowing what you put out there, be an observer and get the information. Because no matter what you put out there, it's going to come back with information. And what do we do with that information? We can make it better. We can tweak it. We can take what went well, and we can think about how, with this information, with this awareness, what do I want to do differently? Maybe something didn't work. Great. Let's change it up. Change what doesn't work. Why didn't it work? Let's make it work.
So it's almost like you have those conversations with people that we wish someone had had with us when we were 20 to help build a bridge so they can run faster to their desired end. They are trying to build or have impact, fulfill their purpose. And if you're not sure how to connect those dots in life coaching, and is there a specific niche market that you will coach?
So I coach newbie coaches, entrepreneurs to start their business. So a lot of them have no idea of how to get that business going, right? So they don't have an offer, they don't know who they help, they don't know what they do. So those are the people that I help particularly. So we need to first identify who are you helping and what are you helping with, so that we can create an offer that you can sell. Right. Having that idea of, oh, I want to help everybody, but how are you going to help them? If you don't know what you're going to help them, how can they be helped? Right. And so it's so important to come up to make sure that you have a person that, an ideal person that you're selling it to. But we also need to create a product or a service so that that person can benefit from getting it from you. And one of the things that I noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches is that they all come from this big service heart, right? I want to help more people. I want to create that ripple effect. But having that heart and passion, it's not good enough. People need to feel it. People need to be able to connect it. People can actually look at it and say, you know what? This is exactly what I needed. So those are the people that I help.
So how can people find you? Do
So
they just go right to your website?
yeah, so the best way to find me is through my website, and I have a lot of resources that people can look at, and if they wanted to download, they can feel free to download, and you can learn with me. So I have like different videos and podcasts that's going on, and there's just a lot of things. So it's like a treasure chest. You go and then you explore it. So that's the best way to connect with me, elevatelifecoaching.org. If they like to follow me on Facebook, like I said, don't mind the Christmas countdown, and I promise you there's going to be a lot of festivity as we count down to Christmas. So they can follow me on Facebook at Coach Michelle Kuei.
I love that. And So I always end with this one question, although I almost don't want this conversation to end. But you're stuck with me because we're in the same state. So we're definitely gonna connect for
Oh, for
sure.
sure.
Someone is listening and watching right now, and they're hearing that voice in their head that says, "You don't belong." What do you say to them?
It comes down to a choice. And every day we make choices. You can choose to listen or to be curious about why that voice show up. And curiosity, it actually has goes a long way, right? As a little kid, we used to be curious about a lot of things. That's how we learn. And so, if you're open to the idea of learning and being more adventurous and explore what exactly is going on with that voice, what lesson or information does that voice want to give you, then you'll be able to open up the door to an opportunity to go deeper to the places where you never imagined before. And I promise you, if you be curious and you just let go of that voice just for a moment, you'll be open up to the opportunity, to the window of what you're truly meant to be.
I'm so, I honor your journey, the decisions you made along the way to become the woman that you are, and the impact that you have in the world today. And I'm honored that you took time to visit with me on my podcast today. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's so much fun.
It was fun. And I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope that I know you got something to take with you. And for me, I have to say, I'm getting nudged about this whole how to deal with your inner critic. I've always been a proponent of kick it to the curb, flush it. And in my recent guests, I'm hearing a common theme, and perhaps you are too. Maybe that inner critic needs a hug and some curiosity. It takes a lot less energy to be curious than to fight something. But one thing I always say in closing is if you are in that dark space, in that chrysalis, remember to keep pressing on because you are creating strength in your wings so you can fly or climb Machu Picchu. Have a great day, everybody.